Welcome to Gotta Love the Knowledge and Gotta Love the Saxophone. Today is my second Selmer Mark 6 versus Mark 7 alto comparison. We'll be looking at some physical differences. In my first episode, we reviewed and measured some differences of tone holes, springs, and all the other fun stuff. I recommend you go see that at some point. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. But let's get on to it now. I took a bunch of photos of my 6 and my 7 together and some comparison shots so we can actually start seeing what the differences are. We will go right to that in a moment here. We will go to, once again, this comparison is between a 1970 Mark 6 alto and a 1979 Mark 7 alto. They're both mine. The 6 is an M tube, the 7 is an N tube. There are 7s that are M tubes also. If I ever get my hands on one, I'm going to take a good look at it. But let's dive right into it. As I mentioned in the previous episode, there really seems to be no difference between the necks other than the emblem, as we see here, and the placement of the octave pip, a very slight variation on its location. The emblem, of course, we have the old Selmer emblem. This one has, in its variation, going back a long time. I can't remember what, since the VII horns, the Mark 7 being a big 7 up front with an M behind it. You may like one or the other. It really doesn't matter. This viewpoint is just what it is. Here's a better picture of the necks themselves. They are the same size. There's slight variances, as I mentioned in my previous episode. The metal stiffener here, the triangular shaped thing, is the same size between the 6 and the 7. The neck is basically the same, pivot point, all that junk. It's all basically the same right there. They both look kind of pretty together. Of course, you got the people who mentioned you got the blue emblem Selmers where there's paint inside the octave mechanism here, and there's ones without the paint. Well, you can get blue paint anywhere. I've even seen red ones too, and I'm pretty sure people just put red paint in there. So what's the difference? A few more pictures there. What I want to get to next is the right-hand pinky table, because there's some large differences here. Of course, one's physically larger than the other, as we can check through these pictures I have here. The 6 really is a little bit more than an inch in total length. And the 7 is about an inch and a half there. So they're quite a bit different. But as I mentioned in the last episode, is when I play, my pinky is really at the rollers. And that's the main difference we get here. Is with the 7, on the lower C key, you could put your pinky on the long extension lever it has to get more leverage. But if your horn is set up right, you really don't have to do that. It should be fairly simple. What I've noticed between the 6 and the 7 on the pinky keys is not really the size or the angle of the keys themselves, but the 6 is off of a singular post. The 7 is of a double post. The key arm for the E flat key is quite a bit longer. And this gives the same feel and the same motion between both the same keys of the 7 versus the 6. On the 6, the E flat key is quite a bit stiffer on this one and quite a bit shorter throw. On the 7, they're both the same throw. The feel is the same on both of them. So to me, the 7 actually feels a bit better than the 6. But, to each his own. Which key you're on when you push it, and there really is no major difference here, just the feel there. But let's dive in a little bit more than just the key touches itself. On the 6, we have the individual posts for the 6 here. But what we also have, if you look on the bottom of the post, is the rib. We have a small oval rib, one for each post. If you look up here, the side F sharp, there's a long rib connecting both the posts for the side F sharp. The 7 is a drastic difference from this. So let's go moving in pictures here. some more 6 and 7. On this one, you can see how the 7 has different posts for both keys and how much longer the E flat key is right there. But let's move forward a little bit more for some more pictures here. Of course, on the 7, the 2 posts are sharing one oval key, as you can see right here. And moving up along the side, here we go. You can see on the 7, the top of those 2 keys are different lengths and different locations. Now this rib, there's a gigantic rib here. It connects those 2 keys, the side F sharp keys on the same rib, and this is the high F sharp key post is also on the same rib. One gigantic rib. That's a lot there. This could be one reason why it deadens the sound a bit, is it hardens the body tube a little bit. Depends upon how you like to look at these things. At one time, and I haven't been able to find it, from Selmer Paris, I got documentation on their analysis and decisions on the reference horns of what type of metal to use, even what type of lacquer to use. They did all these tests, and I had this really nice document, had to convert it from French a lot to English, but I lost it 10, 15, 20 years ago. I wish I had it. And I know there's a lot of people out there who talk about ABC, about these horns and why they play the way they do, and the finish doesn't matter and material doesn't matter. But back then, when they did this analysis, of course, they may have done their analysis thinking that there was a difference and came up with a difference for everything, but that's what they came up with. It's kind of funny. I may talk about it sometime. Probably get a lot of flaming comments on that conversation. But here in the 7, you can see a gigantic rib of all these keys. That's what we see with the 7 really is when they started making the 7, they wanted to improve their manufacturing capability, streamline it a bit, decrease the time, because they were now competing against Yamaha, which was their #1 competitor at the time around the globe. Before that, Yamaha and Yanagisawa and Buffet and all the other U.S. brands really didn't matter to Selmer. But Yamaha really was starting to kick their butt on the professional horn line, especially with the 62s and the 875s. Matter of fact, the 875, the original 875 alto and tenor, are 2 of my favorite horns with modern keywork. Tonally, I prefer SBAs, and actually tonally, I really like the 7s too. That's why I have a set of alto and tenor. But really, the 875 keywork just kills them all. Matter of fact, even Cannonball, I used to have a Cannonball, and I loved it. The keywork was really silky smooth and really nice keywork, but the keywork was kind of thin, a little bit flexible. And even though it played well top to bottom, the tone just didn't have that deep, sensual sound that you're looking for in a saxophone. When saxophone purists are really looking after a certain sound, and that sound you get in vintage Selmer Paris horns, you get it in some Yamaha horns, you get it in some Buffet horns, but Selmer horns really has this kind of bucket sound that you get from the horn. And when the Super Action 80 came out, those particular minute details of the tonal quality were kind of lost. But they're still there with the 7. They're heavier with the 7 than they were with the late 6. But let's move on with the ribs. I could stand here talking all day about things in my head. On the back side of the 6, you can see these small ribs for the table keys here. And you actually see the long rib for the side F sharp on the 6. Now let's get to the side of the horns real quickly. With this, we can clearly see, first of all, the bell brace is different. The 7's on the left, 6 is on the right. The 7 has a bigger bell ring. The brace to the bell is bigger. The braces to the body is bigger. The rib to the body is significantly bigger on the 7 than the 6. The ring itself is thicker, more sturdier. It's just a heavier duty, more sturdier brace for the bell to the body. Of course, just look below that too. I don't want to forget is the pant cover here. It's much longer and bigger on the 7 than the 6 by about an inch, inch and a half, I believe. So the pant guard, there's a difference there too. And all these things add up. The 7 is a heavy horn. And when you look at the size of the ribbing, the size of the table keys, both top and bottom, bell brace, all this extra material added here and there, it really adds up. I think the tubes really don't seem to be much difference when I measure out all the tone holes, and that's in my other video. So the horns look to be about the same, except for the key work, really. Next picture is a little bit dark. Actually, let's see if we can correct that, the autocorrect button. We can see a little bit here. There's really no major difference visually. When you really get down close, though, there is a major difference. You'll find out on the 6, a lot of the mechanisms have a longer throw to them. And when you look at the spreadsheet that we reviewed in the previous episode, you'll see they have longer springs too. This gives it a more, as they say, a buttery feel with the key work. The 7 is more clunky per se, with shorter key work, a faster throw, a little bit sturdier, more precise, one could say. So it depends on what you're looking for and how you're actually feeling things and how you compare different horns. Many people, until they get to a high level, one horn is as good as the other one. You know, they may have, their throat may not be as wide as it can, their embouchure may be tight, they can pinch the reed and mouthpiece is not in the correct location. So to them, every horn sounds the same, every mouthpiece kind of sounds the same. It really takes a long time to mature, to start feeling and hearing these minute differences between different horns. From here, we're going to take a look from the top now. And here I can show you, you see the 6 doesn't have a high F sharp key. So there only has one post on the top. The 7 has posts in a V shape over here on a actually slightly bigger rib. Not much bigger from the top, but as you look at the pictures going down, I want you to also look at the ribs because you can see where the feet for the keys go over in the 6s, they don't go over in the 7s. When the 7s approach a tone hole, there's actually a cutout for it. And we can see that as we go along in the pictures. The posts are the same height here. The keyword for relatively seems to be the same, distance, length, and all that stuff. But as I mentioned, on the upper stack, the G key has a longer key arm on it. And overall, the mechanisms are slightly different when you actually look under all the key work and take a look at things. I may make a third episode and go into the minute detailed differences between the two if people want it, but I'm just kind of telling you what I've noticed so far. Of course, looking from the front, this is what we see of the 7 on the left and the 6 on the right. The 6 is a little bit higher up than the 7 in this picture, but they're relatively the same. I have the differences between the distances of the pearls on my first episode, if you ever want to know the difference, and also the difference, the distance to the table keys and everything in the first episode. Of course, on the 7 on the left, we have the high F sharp key. On the 6 on the right, we don't. There's really no other major differences here other than you can see larger ribs. For instance, look at the key work here in the 6. See that small rib up there for the high F sharp front key? Over here, we got a gigantic rib. And you'll see that throughout, bigger ribs on the 7. Another picture from the top. Looking more down below. One thing I want to point out here that, I don't know if we can see it very well. The 6th table key is supported by really one post here. The 7 has this long, thick brace, 2-point brace going from the inside of the body to the outside of the body. And all the rods are on top of that brace. Over here, they're supported by one post on top of kind of welded together little balls on the top. It's really, the 7 is just a much sturdier horn and more durable. Um, it's called an evolution, I guess. Another picture. Pause if you want. Of course, now moving on to the side view of the horns of base of the two main tubes. The 7's a bit more stiffer than the 6 with the side keys. The spring rates themselves are stiffer. The springs are slightly shorter because the cradles are closer to the posts than on the 7s. One could change the thickness of the spring. They look like the same springs. Of course, I don't know if this 6 has the factory springs in them or not. The 6 was relacquered a long time ago. It was one owner. He hasn't touched it for like 20 to 30 years. Been sitting in the closet. Anyways, a way of lighting up the 6, the 7 bit and make it more fluid like the 6. But the action seems to be a little bit shorter too. So in this case, the 6 is a little bit more fluid, a little bit more buttery feeling, as they say. But not too much difference. Of course, you'll notice here my 6 has the ball and pin on the side keys there, the B flat and C key. They get a bit noisy over time. You can probably read about it on different forums and stuff. I haven't played it long enough where it get very noisy. I may put some Teflon in there just to make it smoother and less noisy. We'll see as time goes on. No major problem right now, though. Oh, and something I forgot to mention. I did, but I didn't point it out. Let's move back in some pictures here. Okay, here I want you to pay kind of attention to the side tone holes when we move forward in a couple pictures here. So let's pay attention to that as we move forward. And I don't know if you can see here, but you can see the rib on the 6 on the right, and the rib on the 7 on the left is actually cut out for the top C key. But let me get to the next picture. You can probably see it easier. Yeah, there it is. You can clearly see over here a little cutout for the key, whereas here the rib isn't over as far. That's because the rib on the 7 is actually wider than the rib on the 6. And see it on the B flat key here too, a cutout for the tone hole. Over here there is no cutout because of the width of the rib is a little bit more on the 7 than it is the 6. More of the rib up there. Of course, here's the front of the horns. The only major difference I figured out was, if you notice the rib on the bell key brace here to the body, it's actually slightly bigger on the 7 than the 6. My 7 did not have any engraving. The 6 did. I've been wanting to get the engraving on my 7 for a long time. I had a BA before that had a boat on the lake engraving on it. Really pretty engraving. I got pictures of that top and bottom. I was going to have my horn sent off the bow and the bell at one time to get that engraved, but I never did get around to it. I may sooner or later. Who knows? Sometimes the non-engraving is pretty good, you know, but it would be nice to have a picture there just for my own sake. It doesn't really do anything. It wouldn't be factory based. It would just be one of the pictures I really loved in the past, and that's with the BA horns. A little bit closer, you can see the 6 and the 7 there. They're kind of sloppy on the 7, the 2 vertical marks, but hey, what are you going to do? A little bit out of focus. As I mentioned, this was a relacquer, so everything kind of got buffed, and the really fine, tight details, sharp details kind of buffed away a bit. That happens when you get things relacquered. Relacquering was a common practice actually in the 80s, 70s. You know, you play your horn a lot, you bring it into the shop, they repad it, they strip off the lacquer, buff it a bit, relacquer it, makes it look brand new. Who doesn't like a brand new looking horn, right? Actually, I prefer to have a lacquered horn. If I had a horn that was missing most of its lacquer, there would be a probably good chance I would send it off and get it relacquered, especially if I can get that gold, dark gold lacquer on it. Just looks so pretty and helps the tone. Oh, don't flame me on that. Don't flame me on that. Anyways, here we're looking at the table keys. What I want to mention here is the it's really weird because the vertical height of the two table keys is really basically the same. Of course, the width is different. The worst part though is the leverage points of the two middle keys where the problem is. As I mentioned before, is I keep my pinky for both hands at the roller part. So my pinky for the 6 is in the middle where the rollers are, and the 7's in the middle where the rollers are, except and you can see it basically here, the arm to support, like the C sharp key, is on the outermost edge of the 7. It's easier if you push it there, but the lever is longer. It's more clunker when you press it when your pinky is by the roller key. And the 6 isn't like that. It's a shorter lever throw. It's a smoother lever throw. And we've all heard the stories of Professor Hemke, who helped design it. And I forgot what the other stories were off the top of my head, but he apparently had big hands and liked it this way. But it's this leverage point is now much wider on the 7 than it was on the 6. Now, I remember speaking to Mr. Ferre probably 12 years ago before he passed away, and he told me if you have a Selmer Omega horn, which I did at the time, both alto and tenor, he said you can take that key work and actually swap it onto the 7 with some minor adjustments here and there. And I tell you what, I stared at my horns, was like, should I swap the key work? Because even on the Omegas was a lot smoother. I stared at it. Should I swap the key work? I would have to swap the springs too. No big problem. But I just kept looking at it, thinking about it. It's like, I really should. But then it plays fine for me. I never have a problem with the table keys. Yes, it is a bit clunkier. And boy, wouldn't I like it to actually feel like a Yamaha 875 instead. But the Omega keywork was fine. It was fine. It was Citrus like, different though. I should actually do a comparison of those two so people know the difference between those two, because even the early Omegas had a lot of 7 inspiration design on it. But I nearly did on both my alto and the tenor. I'd won it both actually. I have a 7 tenor, like I mentioned before. It's that earlier M series with nice engraving on it. Actually has factory gold plating on it too, on the neck. Anyways, that's information for another episode here. But anyways, it's these leverage points for the middle two keys. That's the biggest problem. And then the leverage point, the way they designed the tilting B flat key, is just a long throw. And that's what people don't like about it. That's, if you ask me what's one thing you don't like about the 7, it's the table keys. I've thought about putting the leverage points in a different position on the 7 by just cutting it shorter, re-welding it, and doing work like that. But you know what? I don't want to bother. I'd just rather play. I like playing better than repair work like that, major repair work. And I could have replaced the key work with my other Omegas, except then I would have had two horns, an alto and a tenor, without any table keys on it. Or I guess I could put the 7 table keys on it. I don't know. Anyways, I ended up selling those horns before because they just didn't have the deep tonal quality I was looking for, like I get in the Selmer Paris horns. But this is interesting because it's opposite of what they did with the right hand pinky key, where they made the leverage much smoother and consistent between the two keys. Of course, if you have really big hands, this would help you understand the difference of the table keys to the right hand pinky keys. The right hand pinky keys were really designed for a big pinky. My hands are really small. I mean, you can find 5th graders with bigger hands than mine, actually. And I remember I was teaching a 5th grader in clarinet once who had fingers that are an inch longer than mine. And, curl it, and there's a whole ergonomic aspect of it there. But it's these table keys that people really have a problem with. I totally understand it. But it's not that big of a problem. And if your horn is set up right, your pad's going to close anyways. It's when your pads aren't properly sealing that these big table keys get into a problem. But then the longer throw actually may be beneficial in that case. It's one way or the other. I like playing the six. I like playing the seven. Between the two, actually, if you're throwing a 875 into this mix, is which one do I like to play keywork wise better? I would say the 875. Which do I like tonally better between the three? In this case, I'm going to say the seven. I would probably have a different answer if you had a 1966. And if you had an SBA, I would prefer the SBA actually. The SBA, though, goes back to where they have a fixed B flat key in the table. It's not tilting like the six. And I prefer the fixed key actually because on my Cough Superba 1 and even my student cough that I had at the time, they're all fixed. They're not tilting. So I grew up with a fixed B flat key, and I actually prefer that. This tilting stuff, I don't really care for. I've actually looked at ways of making this not tilting, but the trouble is it drops so the throw is so long and it drops so much that your pinky gets far below the table, which is why they made it tilting. They made it tilting so when you slid back up, you slid back up a ramp to get back on the other two keys. The cough has a different throw, and your finger can slide back on the other keys without too much of a problem. And I can't remember the SBA much anymore, but I never had a problem with that either. Anyways, that's the biggest problem with the sevens is the table keys. Even though I've been playing one since 1982, I completely say, yeah, that's the problem with the sevens. But if your horn is set up properly and it plays properly, you'll love the tone. You'll love playing it. It's a sturdy horn. You'll do tons of gigs with you. So overall, the six stacks feel a bit better, about the same. The right hand pinky keys, I think the 7 pinky keys on the right hand are actually better, more consistent. The biggest issue you have is the table key. But if the horn is set up properly and you want a player, the sevens are a cheap way to get into the Selmer Paris era. There are people who didn't like the SA80s when they came out. They thought some went the wrong way. I want to get an SA80 in here so bad to compare it to a Mark 7. If someone out there has a 7 and they live in Southeast Michigan or don't mind shipping it to me, I'll only keep it for a couple years, a couple months or weeks, Depends how much you'll let me get away with it there. Anyways, overall, I feel the six stacks feel a little bit better, not much. The right hand pinky keys on the six, I think actually the 7 feels better, more consistent between the two keys. On the table keys, of course, the 6 wins the cake there because the leverage between all the keys is more consistent. The 7, to get the proper leverage, you have to move your pinky a lot on there. It just feels a little bit more clunky if you don't, like me. I keep my pinky in the middle. But overall, the Selmer 7 has a better, deeper tone, I think, compared to a late model 6. I really think the 7 is more SBA-like in a way. Actually, if I put the first Series 6 closer to the SBA, for me, I like the fixed table keys versus the tilt and B flat. For instance, I grew up with cuff horns, like my Superba 1 and my Royalist 2 I had was fixed. The throw on the B flat wasn't much as it is on the Selmer horns, so you can easily slide your pinky back onto the other keys. The tilting B flat is there, so because the throw is so much, when you pull your key back up, it goes up the ramp onto the other table keys. You don't have to pick it up and put it over. So that's the reason for the tilt and B flat. If you were to put a 6, a 7, and a Yamaha 875 in front of me and say, which keywork do you like better? I would say the 875. You say, which tone do you like better? From those three, with my late model 1976, I'm going to say, maybe the 7 just a little bit. If you're to throw an early 6 or even an SBA in there, I'm going to say I like the SBA better, the sound. Of course, I love the SBA keywork too. It's much more simpler. Doesn't have the tilting B flat either. But those are my overall thoughts, my opinions. If you like what you saw, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And tell your friends to subscribe too. Thank you for listening to my ramblings. Questions or comments down below. You gotta love the knowledge, you gotta love life, and you gotta love the saxophone. See you next time.